Every year, the NFL Draft is full of talented weapons and wide receivers, and the 2021 NFL wide receiver class was no different. The Arizona Cardinals ended up missing the playoffs last year, but they already had one of the best wide receivers in the NFL in DeAndre Hopkins, and with Kyler Murray at quarterback and an offensive-minded coach in Cliff Kingsbury, they're just a couple pieces away from potentially being Super Bowl contenders in 2022. With the 49th pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Arizona Cardinals may have found the X factor in the second round, and his name is Rondale Moore. In case you're not already familiar, Rondale Moore is one of my favorite college football players of all time, and I think he is the wild card of the Cardinals' 2021 offense. Today we're going to quickly talk about who Rondale Moore is, how he became a star in college, and I'm going to turn it over to my friend Jackson from JEM Live to talk about why he could be the wild card that helps the Cardinals get to the 2022 Super Bowl. Now without further ado, let's just get started. So going back in time, Rondale Moore was born in the southern Indiana town of New Albany and actually grew up a couple doors down from former Indiana basketball star and current Boston Celtic Romeo Langford. They both became big-time athletes, but eventually Rondale would have to make a decision. He originally wanted to be an NBA player, but his skill set was better suited for the game of football. He would eventually go across the river to Louisville, where he would attend the famous Trinity Catholic High School. He would have to sit out a year due to eligibility, but when he played, he was electric and he was a star. He had made the right decision to switch from basketball to football, and the recruiting world had taken notice. He was a consensus 4-star recruit, and he actually originally committed to the Texas Longhorns. Things would change though. Purdue was coming off a horrendous tenure from Darrell Hazell, and they had just hired up-and-coming head coach Jeff Brom, who had just come from Western Kentucky. A fun fact about Jeff Brom is that he was a famous quarterback for the Louisville Cardinals and actually went to Trinity Catholic High School. Eventually, Rondale Moore's commitment started to get a little bit shaky, and he announced that he would be reopening his recruitment. Purdue was heavily involved, and he decided that he would commit to them on a national stage during the Army All-American game. He became the first prized recruit of Jeff Brom's class and had an immediate impact. He went viral for squatting over 600 pounds in the offseason, and in his first career game against Northwestern, he was electric. He broke multiple school records, and on college football's biggest stage, he became a bright young star. From there, he continued excellent play and helped Purdue upset number 2 Ohio State, where he trucked over 3 Ohio State defenders to score a touchdown. The Boilermakers had won 49-20 and were on top of the college football world. Rondale continued to play excellent and had a fantastic freshman season where he was one of the top players in the game. He won the Paul Hornick Award, was a consensus All-American, a first-team All-Big Ten freshman, and the Thompson Randall L. Freshman of the Year. His stats, you may be asking? Well, in 13 games, he had 114 catches for 1,258 yards and 12 touchdowns, with 2 rushing touchdowns as well. Going into his sophomore year, the hype was pretty unreal for Rondale, and some said he was a dark horse Heisman contender. He would have a huge game against Vanderbilt, but in their 4th game against Minnesota, he'd go down with an injury, and he would later miss the entire 2019 season. Going into 2020, he would obviously be eligible for the 2021 NFL Draft, so he originally decided to opt out and train. He would eventually switch his decision though, and he would come back, and he would play in 3 games in 2020. In those 3 games, he'd have 35 catches for 270 yards and 1 touchdown. After that, he decided to declare for the 2021 NFL Draft, and he would finish his Purdue career as one of the best to ever do it. He had 178 catches for 1,915 yards and 14 receiving touchdowns, with 3 more rushing touchdowns on the ground, and keep in mind that was literally only in 20 games. The sky was the limit for Rondale Moore, and going into the 2021 NFL Draft, some said he'd be a first-round pick. He had an excellent pro day, but unfortunately that really wouldn't change the narrative much, as he would still go in the second round. As a huge Rondale Moore fan myself, I was anxiously waiting for him to get drafted, and then all of a sudden, he went to the perfect spot. The Cardinals had taken him with the 49th overall pick in the second round, and he was going to be headed to Phoenix next year. He obviously has a great story and was a Purdue great, and now I'm going to turn it over to my friend Jackson from JEM Live to talk about how he fits with the Cardinals. In case you are new to his channel, he makes NFL content and is one of the brighter up-and-coming football YouTubers on the platform, so be sure to subscribe and check out all his videos, as I'll leave a link in both the description and the comment section.
Thank you so much, Scott. Very quickly, if you haven't already subscribed to Scott's channel, what are you doing? This is your place for the highest quality and most consistent college football content on this entire app. Well, now let's take a look into now NFL receiver Rondale Moore for the Arizona Cardinals. And if you were to tell me 8 years ago that the Cardinals took a wide receiver early in the second round, I wouldn't believe you. 8 years ago, I would have told you they already have DeAndre Hopkins, Christian Kirk, and they just signed AJ Green. But like all things in life, things change. And the NFL is no different, and the game has evolved so much. And to see what has changed, we need to look at the trends. And let's look at last year's Super Bowl. The Chiefs had Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill, Sammy Watkins, Mecole Hardman, Byron Pringle, and Demarcus Robinson. On the other side of the ball, the Bucs had Gronk, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Antonio Brown, and Scotty Miller. Having seamlessly endless weapons and a lot of depth at skills position had become the new norm to contend. We live in a copycat league, so if you followed this offseason, a lot of teams are stacking up running receivers and tight ends, and the Cardinals are no exception. And within this new change is also a new style of player. We have always had fast players in the NFL, but they've always had a very limited route tree, subpar hands, and we're usually being able to be managed pretty easily. But now we have people that should be lacing up their track spikes, getting ready for this summer's Olympics, but instead they're lacing up the pads and playing football. Guys like Tyreek Hill and now Rondale Moore. Rondale Moore ran a 4.29 40-yard dash at his pro day, but like I said before, speed alone isn't a recipe for success. He is an actual receiver. He does a fantastic job tracking the ball in the air, catching over both shoulders, coming back and attacking the ball and catching it at his highest point. He also has an enormous advantage running routes because the DBs have to turn their hips way faster than they normally would, respecting the deep ball, and I swear his ankles are made of rubber by the way he's able to break down and make cuts so low to the ground at almost impossible angles. And that's only the half of it. What Rondale is probably best at and most known for is what he does with the ball after the catch. He doesn't have just straightaway track speed. He can go from full speed to a dead stop and then a full speed in a different direction at a moment's notice. This is why if you search any video of him, it will be prefaced with human joystick or shiftiest player in college football. And why this kind of player has become so vital for contending teams is that it can completely dictate what kind of defenses the opposing teams can run, and with a creative offense can create so much misdirection. When you have a guy like Tyreek or Rondale, you have to account for the deep ball over the top every single play. Right there just kind of nullifies press corners because you can't press them at the line. They're going to line up in the slot or off the ball, start off the play with some sort of motion. They're always going to be able to get a free release, and if you can't jam them and you're pressed at the line, it's an easy 6 points. Even messing up one time can be devastating. We saw Tom Brady and the Bucs catch the Packers sleeping in a playoff game last year. When the first half was winding down, they took a deep shot over the top to Scotty Miller. They slipped one time and paid for it. So now you need safety help over the top, but that's just the start of it. Rondale will also expose man coverage with long dragging routes across the field, 2 yards deep, all the way up to 15 yards deep, and the longer the route develops, the more separation he creates, and the more opportunity he has to run with the ball after the catch. But he also opens up the run game. How? Well, a guy who runs a 4-2 can set the edge pretty easily on a jet sweep. So the defense is standing still, he's running full speed before the snap, and he's going to turn the corner and be gone. This causes defensive ends to widen out and causes linebackers to have to cheat and scrape down the line because they have to respect the jet sweep. But now you're just opening up running lanes for running backs, and oh yeah, Kyler Murray, who happens to run a 4.3 40. This is what speed does alone, a constant threat to go over the top, across the field, shiftiness after the catch, and he can set the edge. But what makes guys like Rondale special is he's a pure receiver who will make those contested catches, run pure and crisp routes like I mentioned earlier. This is why his caliber of player is so highly touted and is absolutely worth the first or a second round pick. This is why Jalen Waddle was selected so high, why Henry Ruggs was selected so high the year before. But the difference between Rondale, Waddle, and guys like Ruggs is Ruggs had the speed but lacks the route running and shiftiness after he has the ball in his hands. So this is what Rondale brings to the offense, and now we can come full circle to mention they still have DeAndre Hopkins. They still have Christian Kirk and an X Factor in AJ Green. They have a great dual threat quarterback in Kyler Murray. So are the Cardinals playing copycat? Absolutely, but they are copying a winning recipe, and it's something you need for a championship offense. Rondale is going to give the defense so much trouble, and every single snap, they're going to have to call out where number 4 is on the field, or whatever number he chooses in the NFL. Between accounting for him and D-Hop, I really hope Cliff Kingsbury can scheme together plays in such a way that this is going to be able to give one of them a favorable situation. I am beyond excited for the Cardinals offense this year. I think this move in a vacuum makes them so much more dynamic, and they're going to be putting up more points every game than they did in previous seasons. And with the efforts to beef up their defense, and if Kyler has the MVP season I think he's going to, it's hard to say that any team would be happy with a Cardinals matchup in the playoffs. They are absolutely dark horse contenders in my eyes. Thank you so much for having me on the channel, Scott. Back to you.
Thank you for that, Jackson, and I totally agree with pretty much everything you've said. Rondale Moore could be a trendy player in fantasy for 2021, but most importantly, I hope he carves out a role with the Cardinals and becomes a player that can contribute for years to come. I absolutely love Rondale Moore, and he was so incredibly electric when I got to watch him in college, and I hope nothing but the best for him. I'm really fascinated to watch how this 2021 NFL season will go, and just how good the Cardinals can be. Let me know what you think down in the comment section, another player who could be an X factor for your team, and how you think the Cardinals and Rondale Moore will do in 2021. Be sure to let me know down in the comment section, subscribe if you are new here, give the video a like if you want to support today's video, and check out all my other videos on the end screen, including my video about the Seattle Seahawks new wide receiver, Dwayne Eskridge. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.